Hey guys, my name is Xuen, and today I'll be going over how to play Samurai in Final Fantasy XIV's expansion Shadowbringers. In this guide, we'll be breaking down each rotation and their benefits. Next, we'll be talking about resource management and their priority, and finally, once we got all that down, we'll be diving into the rotation. So let's get started. Also, if you've already mastered the basics and want to skip to a specific part in the video, you're more than welcome to do so in the description by checking the timestamps. For those that are just picking up Samurai, let's first go over what the resources are and how to obtain them in a rotation. First are the 3 gray handguard icons known as your Sen Guage, which you can gain by executing either your 3 main single target rotations or 2 AoE rotations. More on that later in the video. The 3 Sens of a Samurai are Getsu, Ka, and Zetsu, and depending on how many Sen you have in your gauge, it will change the effect of your ability, Iajutsu. Remember, when going through a rotation to gain your Sen, you must go through all of the different rotations to gain each Sen for your gauge. You can't do 2 of the same rotation to stack them that way for a harder hitting ability or different effect. The first rotation will go as followed. Hakase, Shifu, then Kasha, which will grant you Ka in your Sen Guage. The benefit of this rotation is Shifu, which will grant you increased skill speed and recast speed, as well as reduce auto attack delay by 10%. At level 78, you gain the enhanced Shifu trait, which will further increase this to 13%. The next rotation will be Hakase, Jinpu, then Gecko, which will grant you Getsu in your Sen Guage. The benefit of this rotation is your Jinpu, which will grant you a 10% increased damage buff. Once you're at level 78, you'll gain the enhanced Jinpu trait, which will further increase this to 13%. The last rotation will be Hakase, then Yukikaze, which will grant you Setsu in your Sen Guage. Since the update of Shadowbringers, they removed slashing resistance debuff, so there's no benefit to this rotation other than granting you one of your Sen Guage. Remember, no matter which rotation you decide to do first, Hakase will always be your opening ability to start a rotation. Last thing to talk about before we move on is positionals, which is very important later, so it's best to get in a good habit of knowing them. Luckily, unlike Monk, Samurai only has 2 positionals to worry about, so if all else fails, we can always rely on True North when you know that you can't execute your positionals properly. The 2 positionals of a Samurai revolve around your abilities Kasha and Gecko. Kasha will be performed at your target's side/flank, while Gecko will be performed at your target's back/rear. If performed successfully, it will grant you increased Kenki for your Kenki Gauge, which we'll be going over next. Let's next talk about your Kenki Gauge and how to fill it. At level 52, you unlock your Kenki Gauge, which is used to execute your off-GCD abilities as well as grant a moderate damage buff to abilities. However, until you arrive at level 62, gaining your Kenki Mastery trait, the only way to gain Kenki is to land your positionals properly for a full damage rotation, so it is very important to get in the habit of landing them before you hit max level. Once you are level 62, you will gain the Kenki Mastery trait, which will allow you to gain Kenki for your gauge by executing any damaging ability. However, you'll only be granted bonus Kenki if you keep your positionals in mind. Lastly, the other 3 ways you can gain Kenki are by using Meditate, Ikishoten, or Hagigire. Let's next go over what your Kenki is for. You mainly use it on 4 different abilities. First, and most noticeable, is your Kaiten, which will increase the potency of your next weapon skill by 50%. You'll be using this right before you execute any of your Iajutsu abilities. Next, come your fillers. For single target, and having extra Kenki to spend, you'll be using Shinten, and for AoE, you'll be using Kyuten. Lastly, and for your high Kenki abilities, if you're a single target, you'll be using Sene, and if you're multi-target, you'll be using Giren. A good thing to keep in mind when spending Kenki is that you always need to make sure that you will have enough for Kaiten right before you use any of your Iajutsu finishers when going about a rotation. Let's next briefly talk about Meditate, which will lead into our final gauge discussion. Meditate is unfortunately a very underused ability, however it requires one mindset. During downtime when a boss is doing an animation, when you can no longer attack, pop meditate for free Kenki and meditate stacks for your gauge. Now let's finally dive into our last gauge, which is our meditate gauge. Once in level 80, you'll obtain your final gauge, which is your meditate gauge. You can gain meditate stacks 3 different ways. First is performing an Iijutsu finisher, next is by using Tsubame Geishi, and lastly is by channeling meditate. Once we're at 3 stacks, you can execute a free off GCD ability called Shoha. Now let's put together all that we have learned into a rotation. Alright, let's dive into the rotation, starting off with a low level rotation if you're just picking up Samurai at level 50. Please, once again, keep your positionals in mind and get in a good habit of doing them right off the bat. Alright, so let's get started. First, you'll be opening up with a Hakaze, Shifu, then Kasha. Next, you'll be going into your second rotation, which is Hakaze, Jinpu, then once you have your busts from both your Jinpu and Shifu, use your Hikinbana, executed by using your Iijutsu. Once that is done, you can use Gecko. After this, pop Mikyu Shisui, followed by Kasha and Yukikaze, then followed by a Midari Setsugeka and Gecko. Once that is done, it is just a matter of refilling your Sen Guage back to another Midari Setsugeka. Remember, when continuing your rotation, keep up your Jinpu and Shifu buffs. Now that we got the basic rotation covered, let's dive into an advanced rotation involving your Kenki and Meditate gauges. Alright guys, this is going to be a lot of information, so let's get started. First, we'll be going into rotation the same way we did previously with the Hakaze. Next we'll be popping our Ikishoten for Kenki, followed by Shifu, then Kasha. Next, you'll go into your second rotation of Hakaze, Jinpu, then your Kaiten to buff your Higanbana bleed, then Gecko. Once that is done, you go into your Mikyu Shisui, followed by Kasha, Yukikaze, followed by a Kaiten to buff your next Midari Setsugeka. Once that is done, use your Tsubame Geishi, Shinten, Shoha, then Sene to finish off with a Gecko. This is an advanced opening burst rotation, so just keep in mind after that to keep your Jinpu and Shifu buffs up and go about your rotation as is. And here's the full rotation at full speed so you can better understand it. Lastly, we'll be going over an AoE rotation for Samurai. First, you'll need to get your Jinpu and Shifu buffs up, so you'll be doing your first 2 rotations before we can start doing AoE. Let's first start off in our first rotation, which is Hakaze, Shifu, then Kasha. Next, do your second rotation, which is Hakaze, Jinpu, then Gecko. Next, we'll be popping our Ikishoten, followed by Kaiten, then Tenka Goken, executed by your Iijutsu, followed by Tsubame Geishi for another Tenka Goken. Next comes in weaving your Kyuten with your other regular AoE abilities. You'll first be using Fuga, followed by Kyuten, followed by Oka, followed by Kyuten again, followed by another Fuga, followed by Kyuten, followed by a Mangetsu, and then followed up by Kaiten, then using Tenka Goken, and then finishing off with a Shoha. Here's the rotation again so you can better understand it. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and hopefully it helped you better understand how to play Samurai and Shadowbringers. This guide took an immense amount of work and effort, so if you could be as kind as to just drop a comment or a like to help it spread on the YouTube algorithm, it would be greatly appreciated. Side note is I do stream every single day at twitch.tv/Xuen, so if you have any questions, it's probably the best place to contact me. But other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing and let me know if you want to see a comprehensive guide on another job. Most likely probably something like Dragoon. We'll see. Thanks so much for watching again, guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.